Good evening, Aurora Republic citizens. This is Foghorn again, back for some more academics, mostly comm discipline, a little bit of flight school today. For the 10th of February, 2018. Wow, can you believe it's 2018 already? And February. This is actually a redo of the audio from the stream because I installed some new software, or actually I installed new hardware into my machine, and somehow during the movement of files I managed to erase the automatic recording from the stream, so you get to hear all of this again, or maybe for the first time for those who didn't attend. Anyway, so let's get started. This should hopefully fly through this pretty quick. So we're going to talk about operational impacts of what we don't know, and particularly how it applies to our comm discipline and our brevity code, in other words. So we're going to go through block 1 as well. So what are the unknowns? Things we don't know but wish we did. Basically 4 big things jump out at me. First one is headings. There's no headings in the game yet, which impacts navigation. You're limited to just whatever you can pull up on your mobi-glass as far as a target. In actual aerospace navigation, there is actually headings. There are headings in space. Which the big limitation from this is that it doesn't allow any sort of dead reckoning, and it also gives you no situational awareness because you can't use any directional references. Now, I believe that this is a necessity, so I expect that it's probably coming in the near future because there's just no other way to do it without. It's also tied. Headings also ties into the greater idea of instrument flying in this. They've shown some limited capability as demonstrated in the Alpha 3.0 series. The fact that it is HUD only, there is no round dials, if you will. You have pitch ladders, which are buggy, and you obviously have the throttle setting, which you can see in your HUD, which is also buggy, specifically things like the stuck throttle coming out of Quantum Travel or Super Cruise, sort of stuck in full grunt. The additional no heading reference doesn't allow for anything like great circle steering whenever you're flying around a planet. At this point, that's not that big of a deal because while the planetary bodies, I should say, the moons, are rotating, they are not orbiting. The second they add that in, then we are going to need, in addition to a heading reference, then the navigation system is going to need to be able to do great circle steering to be able to do that. Again, also no dead reckoning. I have no idea if they're coming for this. There's a lot that I've seen from so far in Star Citizen that gives me pause as far as whether or not there's actually a technical advisor anywhere in CIG or RSI who's advising them on how actual astronavigation works. I'm not sure if they are familiar with the term Hohmann transfer. I don't know if they are exactly sure how things actually orbit, but we shall see. So everything, like I said, I have no idea. We'll see what's coming. Radios, you guys have heard me complain about this before. We're sort of a single channel player to the environment capability in 3.0. There's no player-to-player comms outside of using something like Discord or something else, but nothing with inside, and you're only channelized to what is blatantly obvious, like Port Olisar landing services. There's no multi-channel or multi-radio capability. CIG does say it's coming with VoIP in Spectrum, but that's all they say. They don't go into any sort of detail, so we're going to wait and see as far as that particular facet. Another one is that I personally find interesting is that there is no mention anywhere of suppression of enemy air defenses. We know that Chris Roberts knows what that is because he designed it into Wing Commander 4 and Wing Commander 5. They actually had seed missions and seed weapons and that sort of thing, so he knows what it is. But we've heard neither hide nor hair of it in any sort of lore or any of their community engagement or any of that sort of stuff, which would mean an entire section of our brevity code right now, the utility of it's unknown. So why am I bringing this up? One, our brevity code v1.3 is posted both on Spectrum, and I link in Discord to get you there. It's also on our Google Drive. There are entire sections, like the seed section, that are grayed out. They're grayed highlighted, but they're still, I left them in there, but I just simply put a gray highlight behind them. There's a few in the reference section, and there's a few words in there that are grayed out as well, and that's because those are those things that we don't know if these are going to exist or if they're going to change somehow. So pretty much everything that has a heading reference or something to instrument flying or radios and seed, all that sort of stuff is all you're going to see in our brevity code document that is has a gray highlight to it, and that's why. Okay, so we're going to go through the navigation and mission directions sections and fuels and refueling. Again, these are not simple lists of vocabulary like you're learning, Spanish 1 in high school. Yes, this is going to come across a little bit like it's just a list of vocabulary, but this is really it's really learned more of just by use. It's more of sort of a culture and a skill set that you adopt, and it's constantly improving over time. There's, as a 2,300-hour fighter pilot over a 27-year career in the Air Force, your comm skills, your brevity code skills are always improving, and it's something that's a lifelong endeavor. So let me encourage you to just use it. Use it in everyday conversation. It's a heck of a lot of fun. That's why pilots kind of speak the way they do. All right, so navigation and mission direction, you've probably heard a lot of this, and some of it is probably new to you. Alpha check is confirmation of bearing and range to a steer point with the rest of your flight, or with a controlling agency is basically a check of your nav aids to make sure that everybody's reading the same thing. Obviously, bearing is grayed out because we don't know if we're going to have a heading system or anything like that. I think we will. Bozo is you reply if you're unable to navigate to some sort of a rejoin point or some sort of a point, like, for example, everybody set, Yella for quantum travel, and if for some reason Yella's not showing up for you, then you'd say that you're bozo. Buster is the term when you're talking about using military power. Military power, for those who are unaware, means that you are at full throttle but not using any afterburner. That is both modern day, and it also works in Star Citizen. Divert means that you are to proceed to an alternate base or carrier for recovery. You would divert if you can't get into your home station for some reason. Maybe, in modern day examples would be it's a single runway at your home field and somebody's just had an accident or an emergency and has shut down that runway for a time, and now you guys only have so much gas, so you may have to go to your divert base. Weather is obviously another obvious one that happens all the time. Feet wet or dry simply informs folks that you are either flying over water or land. This would be one way that you could imply that your atmospheric entry is complete, so into operating area. And I'll have a flip side of that here in a moment. Flash is hitting the identification button on a prescribed IFF mode. For those in modern day aviation, they'll be familiar with that when a controlling agency tells them to flash, and with a certain code they have a button on their transponder that they can hit, and it basically, the next time a radar sweeps across their aircraft, it pulses that code brighter on the scope than normal. So it helps identify, for the air traffic controller to be able to identify which blip is which when he's trying to pick you out of, say, ground clutter or anything like that. Again, we don't know exactly. We know that obviously there's an IFF system of some sort. You're transmitting who you are and crime stats and all of that sort of stuff, so that people's pips over top of either target designator circle. It's normal aviation, it's a box, but so the target designator circle that's over top of your aircraft, when somebody's looking at you, is either green or blue or orange if you're got a crime stat. That's obviously some sort of an IFF system that's doing that, but we don't know how much capability or gameplay they're going to build into that. So again, that's another wait and see. Gate is the radio call to use absolutely max AB. Now, later on, we'll have some instruction and modules to go through on, some proper flight lead techniques and procedures. and we will talk more to that about the use of buster and gate in those situations. Home plate is the reference for your home base or your carrier. It implies that you are returned to base. So if you're going to say Falcon 1 is home plate, Mad Dog copies. Okay, then know that you're off station, you're heading home. The term investigate would be told from the command and control agency that they want you to use sensors and visual close approaches to figure out who that is and what they're up to. Doesn't necessarily imply an intent to a clearance to engage, but it definitely tells that there's something suspicious with that contact, and they want you to check it out. Jump obviously is quantum travel. You'd use that most likely as 1's ready, 2's ready, 3's ready, 4's ready, 3, 2, 1, jump. And that way you can all coordinate so that you jump at the same time. At some point there may be a formation jump system that comes in which might make this obsolete, but we will see. Lean again is dependent on a direction, but it could be cardinal versus ordinal. You could actually go, or I mean relative versus cardinal. It's just we're gonna if we're going from A to B and suddenly some sort of a threat pops up in between the two that we're gonna drive right through the middle of the threat, then I would, as the flight lead, I would tell that controlling agency, and I would tell the flight, we're going to lean right, we're going to lean west, lean heading 030. In other words, to offset and go around it to avoid a threat that we don't necessarily need to engage. Knock it off. Knock it off is a sister of terminate, which comes here later. Knock it off means cease combat maneuvers, attacks, and activities. This is obviously in a training environment. You holler knock it off, that's kind of saying the F word in front of mom. When you holler knock it off, it means everybody in the exercise who can hear you on this frequency is going to stop what they're doing because there's something bad going on. Somebody's having an emergency with their aircraft. Somebody is maybe somebody's punched out. There's something that means knock off all training everywhere around where we're at. Terminate I'll get to in a minute, which is similar but means slightly less. Mad Dog, Mission Director on Ground is all that means, Mad Dog. Of course, MDOG, people produce that as Mad Dog. It is both a position, a job, and it's also a call sign. It can be used as a call sign as well. So it's pretty popular for C2 agencies to call themselves Mad Dog. And just because Mad Dog means Mission Director on Ground doesn't mean they're actually on ground. That's sort of a holdover from the days of yesteryear, days before things like airborne command posts and AWACS and that sort of stuff existed. So Mad Dog could be sitting on an AWACS in modern times, and therefore in Star Citizen, maybe you have a Mad Dog who's sitting on a Terrapin or on a Carrack or something like that, controlling. That doesn't mean they're doing like air traffic control. They're just kind of doing mission direction from a military point of view. Mics is the quick term for minutes. So we say, hey, we'll be ready in 5 mics. Orbital would be a way of telling somebody that we've just completed atmospheric exit. It does not necessarily mean that we are actually in orbit. It just means we're in that vicinity. A playmate. Playmate is the term for a cooperating aircraft, usually in some sort of a training scenario. So if you're going out and you and your 4-ship are going to be blue air today, then the 4-ship of red air that's going to come training fight with you, they are your playmates. Playtime is the amount of aircraft can remain on station. Playmate typically implies a training scenario. Playtime does not. Playtime is how much time can you spend on station. That's usually a fuel limitation. Right now, Star Citizen engines run on FM Magic, FM, I like to call it. They run on FM. They're FM engines, FM Magic. They don't seem to burn any fuel, but you can just go forever. Afterburner burns fuel. Quantum Traveler burns fuel, but magically the engines just produce thrust on hope and change, apparently. Other things that that you have to hit the believe button. Anyway, Popeye is when you're going to be flying in and out of clouds or some other area of reduced visibility. We know that gas clouds in space and in atmospheres are coming. I think in 3.2 or 3.3. Last time I looked at the roadmap. So they're coming in the near future. So there is going to be opportunity to use this one. Let somebody know that you're Popeye. You're going in and out of something that's obscuring your visibility. Power is a command to set the throttles at an appropriate or pre-briefed percentage. It's a little bit different. There's a set of brevity words here that are basically the way you command a certain parameter on your flight's spacecraft. So power would be to set a specific percentage of throttles. That typically isn't going to get used very much because that only is useful if everybody's flying the exact same model of spacecraft, so that that percentage comes out to be the same speed. We'll talk about another one that's actually more accurate for speed here in a minute. Pushing is the term whenever you're departing a designated point. So you marshal, you're like, hey, we're marshaling at this point. That's where we're getting everybody together. We all just took off from Port Olisar. We're marshaling out in front of Port Olisar until everybody gets done having, client crashes and ships spawning without doors and all that kind of stuff, and getting it all together until we ever all get together. That's the marshal sort of phase of an operation. And then once you've got all of your forces together, you got all your ducks in a row, then you would push. Talon, Eagle, Viper flight are pushing, and that would tell C2 that they're leaving the marshal point and heading off towards the mission. That could be done on time. That could be done on an event. Like the most typical event is once we get everybody on board. Ready. Ready means ready. Probably usually for a quantum travel jump. It could also be for some sort of a pre-briefed exercise. Like we're going to set up a specific scenario. We're going to start here. You're going to start there. We're going to do this. 1's ready, 2's ready, 3's ready, 4's ready, ready to wrestle. Off you go. Reference. Reference a direction. Similar to power, reference is how you tell people exactly a heading that they need to fly right now, or at least they need to reference. So as a flight lead, I may say to my flight, reference 180. It means I'm going to fly 180, and then number 2, 3, and 4 need to maneuver into whatever formation I tell them they can bet that my nose is exactly 180.000 degrees, and I'm not going anywhere else, so that they can get proper spacing and they could use that as a reference. Reset means to return to a previous position or area of operations. Say you're in a cap, you're defending an area, you get told, hey, go over here and investigate. So you go investigate a contact, find out that it's some Joe Bag of Donuts who's not a threat. He's just some guy minding his own business that happened to come by, and he's not squawking. So now that you figured out who he is and what he's doing and that he's not a threat, then they would tell you to reset, or you would tell command and control that you would tell C2 that we're resetting. Resume. It would be a command to resume either the last formation, route, or mission ordered, depending on who's telling whom what to resume. Retrograde is typically used whenever you are protecting some sort of a high-value airborne asset. So in modern day, that would be, you have your fighters are out here manning caps. You have AWACS and tankers not very far behind them, fairly close, so you can keep the gas and the big super radar that sees way out, a hell of a lot farther than my little radar and my fighter jet does. But if suddenly a serious air threat or a serious number of air threats show up and start coming our direction, we would scream. The fighters would scream at them, would scream at the HAVA to retrograde, and they would flow back away from the battle area, back to to what we would call reset caps, back to other areas farther back. Not going to have quite as much ability because you've got to fly farther back as the fighter to get back to hit your tanker. But while we're duking it out with the bad guys, the big fat airplanes with no defenses and no weapons aren't right there in the fight within missile range, so they can't get popped on by an opportune moment. So any sort of an escort mission in Star Citizen, I could see the opportunity to use the word retrograde. That's telling you're telling your protected asset, get the heck out of here. You go back the way we came. We're going to stay here and fight these guys off until you get the heck out of Dodge. Rolex is how you tell that we're changing the timing for something. So if we have a time on target of X, and now because of something I can't make it there by X, I'm going to be 10 minutes late. I would tell everybody I need to Rolex 10 mic. Positive is later in time, negative is earlier in time. So if you say, hey, Rolex negative 5 mic, that means, hey, time on target is no longer noon, it's now 11:55. So don't get that confused. Scramble, most people probably understand what scramble means. Take off as quickly as possible. If you're an alert fighter, you've actually got stuff prepared specifically for a scramble. Scrub just means that your mission's canceled. Set is another one of those sort of parameter type commands. Set is different than power, even though they both are related to speed. So power is I'm telling you to set a percentage on your throttle. Like I said, not that useful because different models of spacecraft are going to have different throttle settings. Set is I'm going to tell you the exact speed number that me as the flight lead that I'm going to be referencing. So if I say set 180, okay, that means I'm going to be flying 180 meters per second, and then you can use your throttles however you want to stay in formation with me. Shadow is a command for you to follow a targeted group or vehicle to gather intelligence. It implies stealth. It's basically similar to investigate, but it may not necessarily be, hey, we don't know what this guy is. Maybe we do know what the guy is, and we're trying to get some other bit of information. We know it's a bad guy. We don't want you to blow him up. We want you to follow him, shadow him, and see if he takes you back to his pirate base, so then we can wipe out the whole damn nest. Excuse me. Say status. Hey, what's your tactical situation? You could also not necessarily, you may hear this not used as with the word say. It's status. It's basically a question mark. Or say status is a little bit imperative. Not a little bit. It is an imperative. That's C2 telling you, I want to know what your status is right now. Are you offensive? Are you defensive? Are you dead? We need to, if you're dead, I don't expect a response. Okay. Steer X would be the, hey, select nav point. So we say, hey, we're all going out to Deacons as a group en masse to go run them completely out of medical supplies, because that's a sport these days. We would say steer yellow, and that tells everybody set your Moby-Glass quantum travel target to yellow. Okay, terminate. Finally made it to it. Terminate is the flip side of, not flip side, it's the little sister of knock it off. Terminate in a training scenario means, hey, we're done with this local engagement between me and you, but the entire rest of the red flag exercise is still going on. And our little local terminate doesn't terminate anybody else's exercise. Everybody, the little war goes on around us. Knock it off stops it all. Knock it off stops the entire war. So, like I said, using knock it off, particularly in a big, large force exercise where there's 60 aircraft to a side, playing big scale war, you throw the knock it off, you just stop that entire show, all of it, everywhere within radio range, and you're probably going to have some hard questions to answer. Okay, trespass, system position. The address flight is entering a known threat ring. Basically, usually it's some sort of a surface to aerospace type threat ring, but considering we see that Port Olisar can shoot at you nowadays, if you have a crime stat high enough, may not necessarily be surface to aerospace. It could be, station to aerospace. So this would be a way for C2, if we ever get the ability to be able to observe, similar to the way an air battle manager can see the whole fight on his scope on the AWACS. If the Terrapin and Carrack can do something similar like that, then that would be a time where, hey, you realize you're trespassing into a threat. Is how that one's worded. What luck? Similar to like say status. Say what luck wants is a request for the results of the mission or task. So you guys go in to deliver your torpedoes, and Mad Dog hasn't heard back from you in a little bit because there's a lot of traffic going on the radio because of the big fight going on. He may say, "Hey, what luck?" You come back and say, "Hey, target destroyed. 2 torpedoes remaining." What state is different than status. What state is specifically asking for things like fuels and weapons. Again, don't know if fuel is really going to be a part of that with these FM-powered engines. If the FM goes away and the engine's actually in all phases of flight burn fuel, then that will suddenly become much more relevant. Don't know if it's really worthwhile with missiles being such a freaking joke in Star Citizen. We're shooting Nerf missiles at each other. If keeping track of launchable weapons such as missiles is worthwhile until you start getting up to stuff big enough to take out or damage cap ships. So torpedoes is probably worthwhile to sort of keep track of at a C2 level. Last one is words. It's words. It's information. It's mission specific information. So the way we've done a few of our training scenarios, where everybody takes off and they're in the marshal, then Mad Dog comes up and gives the mission brief. Those are, stand by for words. It would also be the other way too. So things like in-flight reports, after action, hey, Mad Dog, Eagle 1, home plate, 4 by code 1, successful. Those would be his words. Okay, so that's navigation and mission direction. Fuels and refueling is very small because there's not much to it left. It may grow as we see what refueling turns into here in the next patch or two. I think, is it not the next patch or the patch after? I can't remember if it's supposed to be coming in 3.1 or 3.2. Breakaway is pretty much exactly what it says. Get the heck away from the tanker for safety of flight. So if you're on the boom, you can call breakaway, or the tanker can call breakaway, either of you. But it basically means get the heck, click off of the boom. We don't know exactly what the mechanics of refueling is going to be. Modern day military aircraft, the boom actually latches into the hardened boom that the Air Force uses. Actually latches into the aircraft. So you hit the button to release, and then you get the heck away from the tanker as fast as you can in a safe manner. Bingo and Joker are related to each other. If you have a fuel state, again, my previous comments about FM-powered motors apply. So these may or may not be, let's just say their utility and importance is questionable at the moment. Bingo specifically is the exact fuel state needed for recovery. It means this is time to return to base. It's time to go home plate. Joker is just a pre-planned fuel state above bingo. Joker is always above bingo, at which some sort of a pre-briefed event should begin, such as it's time to go to the tanker, or it's time to switch from this mission over to this mission. You can have a million jokers on a sortie. You could have 15 different Joker fuels, but you only have one bingo. And when you get to bingo, the mission's over. You have just enough gas to get you straight back to home plate with any divert gas that's required if home plate has bad weather or somebody crumples on the runway, sort of thing. So that's it in a nutshell. Extremely quick. Obviously, this is a reaccomplishment, so you can't ask me questions. Well, you can't ask me questions here where everybody will hear them. I'm always available whenever I'm on Discord, which I try to kind of sit there whenever I'm at the hacienda and not doing anything else. So you can always reach me via the emails. You can private message me on Discord. Yeah, all that. And I will do my best to answer them. Okay. That was it, Fast and Furious. I hope I didn't bore you to tears. And you have a pleasant rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening.